It is a Wednesday, right? No, not yet. Not yet. It's Tuesday, if I'm not mistaken. Tuesday morning. And remember, keep in mind, I'm always keeping up with these, or trying to get caught up with some comic books. I've been behind for a few weeks, so I'm slowly but surely getting caught up. So you guys are going to, of course, see a bunch of different books that I'll be talking about that are a few weeks old. I haven't had a chance to discuss it in a video, solo video. I've talked about this comic book elsewhere. Like I've talked about this, for example, on stream, but not necessarily on single videos. I want to talk about The Amazing Mary Jane. And I don't like to always compare and contrast. I've done videos like that, but I do feel like there are certain portions that it's necessary, times on when it's necessary. And by compare and contrast, I mean more so between like DC versus a Marvel comic book. The only time I like to do it is like me doing it now, and that's when there is a way to measure when someone does something right or something wrong. If there was, let's say, a Marvel equivalent, for example, I would compare those two books. But this just happens to be cross company. Now, The Amazing Mary Jane, I'm on issue 4 right now, is a very, very good, solid book going into the 4 issues. Not sure how you guys feel about Leah Williams, but this is a good book. Now, what this does that, let's say, as an example, Lois Lane. What if you take, let's say, the first issue of this versus that first issue? One, and the reason why both of them are it's okay to compare and contrast because you're talking about the core love interest of another prominent superhero, right? So Superman and Spider-Man. So you now have these branch offs between two different characters that are the love interests of those major characters. So they're connected in a sense, but this is sort of a disconnect in when they have their own story. Now I get that considering the timeline in which that book takes place, there's some things to consider in that regards when we talk about Lois Lane, her being a Max series. But then you have this right here, which is it's solid for a few different reasons. Now the story itself deals with more so her acting career, Mary Jane, that is. And in this, you're dealing with some sort of redemption thing going on because what happens is the actual director, I forget his name, is being played by Mysterio. So that guy, and by that, when I say played by Mysterio, I'm saying Mysterio is using him as a front. Like he's basically acting as if he's him and everybody thinks that he's him, but he's not. He's actually, of course, Mysterio. The actual director, he sent on some goose chase to do something. But he, when you consider his origin, which is a cool connect, when you consider his own origin, it comes from that line of being involved in making movies and stuff. So he's trying to sort of redeem himself, and he wants to create this movie, and it's based on Spider-Man and his villains, and at first Mysterio was, but now Mysterio is playing himself in this movie, and it deals with a lot of things that are going wrong within it, budgeting problems and so forth. So, and Spider-Man is loosely involved because Spider-Man is part of the movie, and though Peter Parker himself only really shows up in a issue or two to basically just talk on the phone with Mary, it's clearly her book. It's not like an offshoot of his book. It's her book, and I like it because it's not the prototypical superhero book, if that makes sense. Even though we're dealing with that element, it's just more dealing with on air, like the sets, right, and acting and stuff like that. So Leia does a good job of sort of capturing those sort of ideas. It's believable in the sense that these are actors shooting a movie based on people with superpowers. And it's very good. There's no hyperfeminism or anything like that being surrounding this character. The artwork is pretty solid. There's no shying away from the fact that Mary Jane has a sex appeal or what have you. It's just a good, solid book. It's good. It's. I mean, I can't say enough good things about it in terms of that and why it's refreshing when you compare it to something like Lois Lane issue number one, which is basically the reader or the writer, excuse me, putting his own personal politics into the book, which always makes for this terrible book. It's like always does that, where it's so on the nose. And I've talked about that. You can go read or also watch my actual review of that issue because it's very bad. But this is a solid book, and I wanted to make sure I highlighted it. And then, for those that maybe aren't into that stuff, and you're looking for just a little kind of something that's not run of the mill, right? Just a little offshoot comic book, but has characters that you're familiar with. Amazing Mary Jane is it. So I cannot say enough good things about Amazing Mary Jane and what it does well. It is not hyper political. It is not overly political. Again, not no high. There's no, at least up until now, there's no hyper feminism or anything like that. It's just a solid book. I get that it wouldn't be for everybody in terms of, I know some guys want to see the Spider-Man esque element of him combating villains and stuff like that. This doesn't necessarily deal with that, so I get that. However, it's a good book. It's a good book, good offshoot nonetheless, and hopefully they keep it up.